Okay, everybody, thank you very, very much for your patience before we start this meeting of the West of England Combined Authority today. So I'm going to start off by doing some introductions, particularly for those people, obviously, who don't know who makes up the committee. I'm Dan Norris. I am the Regional Metro Mayor, and I'll just quickly introduce my committee colleagues who are to my right and to your left if you're in the audience there, of course. To start off, we've got Amanda Rigby, who is deputising for Kevin Guy today. Thank you very much, Amanda, for coming in. Really appreciate that. We've got Marvin Rees from Bristol City Council, of course, and Claire Young from South Gloucestershire Council too. Welcome to you all. Also in attendance to my left is Richard Bonner, who is the Local Enterprise Partnership, or on the Local Enterprise Partnership, if I can speak properly, who's a non-voting member of the committee. And also to his left is Ed Plowden, who is from the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. And to his left is Jeff Gollop, not politically necessarily, but certainly geographically, from the Audit Committee. Thank you very much, all of you, and welcome. Okay, I have to read out the evacuation procedure, which is in the event of a fire, please await direction from staff members who will help assist with the evacuation. Please do not return to the building until instructed to do so by the fire wardens. Thank you very much. Okay, the next item is item 3, which is declarations of interest. Do any members here have any declarations to declare, or interest to declare, rather?
Thank you. Can I just confirm that my register of interest is up to date? Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Richard. For those who didn't hear, Richard was saying that his register of interest is up to date, so that's all noted. Thank you very much, Richard. Okay, the next item is item 4, minutes of the meeting, which was held on the 26th of January of this year. Do committee members present agree that these are a true and correct record of the meeting? I can see nodding. Marvin, you okay with it as well? Thank you very much indeed. Okay, I'll sign that as a correct record. Thank you. Now, the next item is the chair's announcements. Now, I am going to be saying goodbye to Marvin because this is Marvin's last combined authority meeting. I'm sure he has strong views about that. This is Marvin's final meeting with the committee as Bristol moves away from a mayoral model. So I think it right that we reflect on some of Marvin's significant successes. I would like to point to the Bristol Beacon, where Marvin has made an important speech just this Wednesday. The Beacon has a proud 150-year history in its previous guise, of course. It's hosted people like Bob Dylan, the Rolling Stones, and my particular favourite, the Beatles. And now that fantastic building is safeguarded for generations to come, I want to thank you, Marvin, because I think that will last for more than 150 years, and it will enrich and improve not just Bristol, but the wider region and the country too. And I thank you very much for your strong leadership, because that wasn't easy. You got it through. Fantastic. Well done. We also agree, Marvin and I, on the urgent need to tackle the climate emergency. Marvin's well known for that, of course, and to ensure children from working class backgrounds get the best possible start they can, and for the need for a more sustainable and a fairer economy. Marvin has put some very, very important building blocks in place to achieve those goals, and I think that is already recognised by many, and I believe history will judge that, Marvin, to be so as well. So I would like to put on record my personal thanks to Marvin for his very significant public service to date, not just in Bristol, but across the wider region too. He has made a real difference, and to be able to commend a politician in that way is high praise indeed. So thank you very much for all that you've done, and we wish you obviously well in the future, health, happiness and success, and I'm sure we'll be seeing you again in whatever way you choose in the not very too far distant future. Thank you. Okay, now we're going to move to the next item I'd like to speak about briefly, please, which is knife violence for all the obvious reasons. Now, I need to turn to this extremely serious issue. I know that there has been a significant level of concern after recent tragedies across the west of England, and I'm sure all our thoughts are with the loved ones of those affected. At my annual school summit earlier this week, sadly, but not unsurprisingly, this year's big theme for the young people turned out to be how to tackle knife crime. The West of England is resolved to support communities in their efforts to prevent knife violence. My thanks to Bristol Council and South Gloucestershire Council for providing some initial ideas. And I know Baines has an important story to tell on this issue too, and I look forward to getting that in due course. and I will provide a further update at the committee in June. Thank you. Now, the next item I want to quickly talk about is BSIP. Turning to BSIP, I understand that leaders from the unitary authorities have asked for BSIP resubmission to come to the committee before it's submitted to government in June. I can confirm that combined authority officers will write to the Department for Transport to request an extension to submit our proposal after a committee meeting on the 14th of June. My chief executive will, of course, keep leaders and chief executives updated. Okay, now the next item is items from the public petition, statements and questions. Now, there were 10 questions received from 5 individuals, I believe, and the responses to these questions have been circulated. There were no petitions received at this meeting today, or for this meeting today. In addition, 6 statements were also received. These have been circulated and published on the Combined Authorities website. Some members of the public are in attendance and can address the committee for up to 3 minutes each on the topic of their statements. So the people who have given prior notice, and this is always a bit tricky because sometimes people come and don't come and what have you, so please bear with me. The people I have down here start off with Mrs. Bobby Oliver. Is Mrs. Bobby Oliver here? Hello, you're very welcome. Your time starts now.
Hi, I'm Bobby Oliver, Hub's Mobility Advice Lead for West of England, and my job is to advise people on ways to get around without a car. Most of the people that I help have recently been told that they can no longer drive for medical reasons, and this comes as a big shock to them. This will be an increasing problem with an ageing population and more diagnoses of cognitive impairment or dementia. There is a confusing array of transport choices which look good on paper but do not meet people's needs in reality. Retirement from driving is one of the things that I encourage people to plan for rather than denying that it will happen and having it thrust upon them. I'm looking forward to seeing how the new Westlink zones will help people living in rural areas, and West Local will come into play. A publicity drive and clear instructions to staff about what type of journeys are allowed will surely help. Of course, it will still not help those living in urban areas such as the city of Bristol and areas of South Gloucestershire such as Kingswood, where some people do not live within easy access of a bus stop. I spend a lot of time recommending community transport options for people, but these services are so stretched and underfunded that they cannot offer journeys that people require all of the time. Their funding has been cut in effect by not being reimbursed for the fares of people using concessionary bus passes, so that they all have to charge per journey, as well as the annual membership fee, to create what the transport planners have called a level playing field. Although community transport is not a game or a competition, and people do not have a choice about which scheme they use because they operate in geographical areas. This is disproportionately affecting South Gloss shop mobility, which is very small and relies on the bus pass reimbursement to cover running costs. They have been compensated this year, but this will cease by 2026. There are other caveats of the WECA grants which really show a disregard for the way that community transport charities use their funding, which I will not set out here, but suffice to say that WECA are trying to force the community transport sector into a centrally administrated commercial model, much more like Westlink. The community feel and the local knowledge will be lost. 30 seconds. Okay, one of the things that my job demands is a quarterly report to the Department for Transport, which I'm pleased to say will include a section about bus services that have been brought back in. But I also have to report where there's a lack of services, and that will be quite comprehensive.
Thank you, Bobby. Do you want a little bit more time? Have you finished what you wanted to say?
No, that's okay. I'll cut
Are you
it
sure?
short. Yeah,
thank you.
thanks.
Well, you said it very well, so thank you very much indeed. David Redwell. Is David right? Yes, I can see David. Welcome, David.
Thank you. So I think we're in difficult times, really, with WACA being in special measures. I know the history of this goes back, I think, to the transport levy, if I'm honest, Mayor Norris. The fact that the councils decided not to up the transport levy, and then we ended up with not enough money to run the public bus services. The situation has stabilised somewhat, with bus services back at Ashton Vale, bus services back at Oldbury Court. some bus services back with West Local in the Chew Valley, the X91 express journey every day to Bristol, and the 179 that is going to run with Polton Town Council, which is very welcome to the Radstock area into Bath. So and also with the aid of South Gloucestershire and Gloucestershire County Council working together, we've managed to maintain at the moment the link very important link from Yate to Wootton Under Edge, thanks to Gloucestershire County Council as well. And Baines has recently, because I suggested, they speak to Wiltshire, and we've done a deal on the 94, so that's fine. I don't have a problem. If a transport levy is spent with the adjacent authorities, there's a problem there. It's just make sure there's issues. But we still have, and then the lady can't be here today, and a petition was presented at Bristol Full Council, no bus service to Stapleton, and that community is still cut off, up into Downend and Bromley Heath. I know Marvin's involved in trying to help there with Marley Bennett, and I know Claire, so is Chris Wilmore. We are trying to find a solution. But we've also got this terrible situation of not having a bus service from Avonmouth to Cribbs Causeway through North Bristol. It will explode with the passenger groups, and I'm already beginning to feel it. Day and night they ring me, and I tell Alex, of course, our friend here, what's going on. Make sure she's in the loop. She's not sitting there in a moment. But yes, so we have a problem, and North Bristol will have no bus service to the port. And I've also had the port on to me as well, as your passenger rep on the panel. So we've really got to look at this better. I was disappointed that we didn't have a report to the last panel, as I've told you. Passenger panel from First Group, Transport or Stagecoach. That can't go on. They must report to us so we can sign off as passengers what we agree with or not. I sit on a number of panels, Chief Executive, in other parts of South West England. We don't do it like that. And we actually push back against First if they try to take the money for services that we're not happy with. We're not doing it. We are not in the 1985 Deregulation Act, as one of your officers said. And we run it, we run under the 2017 Act. But partnerships are about making sure that we agree with First or don't agree with them. It's not what First wants to do commercially for us. So really, I'm asking you to look at this. Today's venue, by the way, I had to come from Patchway Station. It's not on a bus route, the nearest metro bus. There's stops outside, but they don't stop. So perhaps the officers could look very clearly at where we put these transport authority meetings. This is a public transport authority. If people can't get here by bus or by train, maybe we should pick Keynsham and stay at Keynsham. I think I like Keynsham. It's fully connected. So Westlink we're very pleased with, but it must connect with local services. And we need to have a conversation with Marvin, the team at Bristol and Baines and South Gloss about what money is available from other sources, CAS money, mixing up money, and see if we can put some limited BSIP money. It's very limited. I stress that, by the way, for those who think they're going to go raiding the pot. We don't have much left, to see if we can put some of the supported services back. And Doug, by the way, is welcome to sit down. He sat 2 hours, I put it on record, 2 hours with me to talk about services. I've had 2 hours with Stagecoach. I know Claire has met, and I know you've met as well. And they're prepared to do some things for us in September, but can we get the conversations going? And also Mark Harper, who I actually quite like, he's not my political view, but I quite like, is very interested in helping to get this authority and the bus services to work for the people and communities. On rail, well, the rail director's very good, actually. I've got Malcolm Parsons is here, excellent work. We've got to get Henbury Station sorted out and the ramp, but I think you'd be horrified to learn that we have a Trowbridge Station and they're not collecting fares down. They're travelling free on our Metro West. Your services, they're travelling free. The station's unstaffed. There's no disabled access. It's in Wiltshire. Western Gateway Transport Board are on it. Can we ask them to staff the station, collect the fares, because we've given £35 million to First Group. We expect the revenue in on those lines. And the other point is, Brendan Taylor's not here.
David, I'm going to have to ask you to stop.
Okay, I'm going to finish by saying that the rail replacement services, when they're put in operation and we get resilience with the tracks going down, we don't get the kind of rail replacement service on the Severn Beach line that passengers on that route or other routes require. Thank you.
Thank you very much, David. Okay, I think, is it Tina? Oh, yes, thank you. Tina Biggs. Thank you. Hello, Tina.
Hello, thank you.
And you're speaking for Rosa.
That's
Kell,
right, yeah. So Rosa Kell, the Somerset Bus Partnership and Somerset Catch the Bus campaign. She's not able to be here, but I'm representing her. So buses, again. She notes that very grateful for the new X91 True Value service, which is I think one of the successes of Westlink, where you've negotiated something with the community and that's definitely worked well as an initiative. Thank you very much for that. We appreciate there are DFT rules around the spending of BSIP money, and that's constraining the whole community transport thing. So I think it's a DFT thing rather than Dan Norris or Western Combined Authority. I just want to make the comment that with the climate change happening right now, we've got to get people out of cars. The quickest way to do that is with buses, because you can put a bus route up pretty quickly. More bus stops near railway stations, as we've kept saying. We'd please urge the authorities to reach agreement on transport levy, put money in there, because the BSIP money is for new services, not existing supported services. And obviously we're grateful. On my personal view, I'd like to say thank you to Marvin for an amazing 8 years, and I'm very, very sorry that you've had to lose that, and we very will miss you. And I think the people who've been against you will miss you as well. And I think people will be saying, who do we talk to? And that's a big question everyone's asking, who do we talk to? And I'm deeply sorry about the way it's gone, but I'm very grateful for what you've done. Just my final challenge, who here turned up by public transport? Pretty good in the public gallery? Yes, we met you on your bike from the station. Dave and I had to push Dave on his wheelchair from the bus stop, Ditchley Pass Lane. So please, there is a metro bus that goes past here. There's a stop there that's been discontinued. So I'm sure someone can join up those lines. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed, Tina. Appreciate that. Okay, the next person I think is Amelia Melville. Amelia.
I'm Anna, talking for Amelia.
Oh, right.
Reading her
So
statement.
tell me your name again.
It's Anna.
Anna, okay, Anna, and
But
you're
I'm
speaking
also
for...
from
Oh, I can
Clay.
see now, actually, yes. You're Anna, is it Mountney?
Yeah, Mountney.
Right, great. Thank you very much for being here to speak for Amelia.
It's okay. We welcome the conversation in the Scrutiny meeting on Monday about the governance of WECA, and we are pleased to see Dan Norris attending and responding to questions. The governance of the West of England or former Avon area has been a barrier to effective public transport for a long time, preceding the creation of WECA. We are now looking to WECA to provide the coherence and the leadership needed to achieve effective public transport for all. This requires collaborative participation of all unitary authorities. We also heard a lot of comments desiring better communication and transparency, an active collaborative relationship with the WECA Mayor and the officers. From our standpoint, it does seem that many things are happening behind closed doors and then announced as a finished product rather than developed collaboratively and transparently. This is also a necessary part of building trust and effective collaboration. We're aware of the tendency to be parochial, as Dan says, and agree with the need for transport investment to make sense for the region as a whole, rather than be divvied up between authorities. Given the nature of travel as journeys from one place to another, delivering good transport in one area brings a benefit to people in all areas, whether from reduced congestion and better air quality due to less through traffic or better journey availability. We welcome the explanation of the Citizens' Assembly outcomes prioritising bus services. While we are glad to see specific mention of younger and older people and prioritisation of good connectivity for rural areas, we are disappointed not to see mention of disability and accessibility of buses. This is essential as many disabled people are fully reliant on buses and have fewer other transport options. Accessibility includes making it easy for people to use buses without having to be digitally literate. We also would like to see reliability as a greater priority, as a lack of reliability or certainty that a bus that is scheduled will even turn up is a significant barrier to people choosing buses over cars or even taxis. The committee acknowledged the challenge of funding availability and how difficult it would be to achieve the number one item on the list of at least one service per rural area to connect to a hub. Our criticism of the Citizens Panel has always been the implied acceptance of underfunding to bus services. Reliability will be key to increasing ridership, but this is also an issue for funding of local government and public services in general, and needs to be addressed at both local and national levels. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much, Anna, for Amelia's words. Some very good points well made, so thank you for that. Right, I think we've got Georgia Statham now. Is Georgia around?
Yes, hi.
Hello, welcome.
Good afternoon, thank you. So my name's Georgia, and I'm a final year medical student studying and soon to be working as a doctor in Bristol in the southwest. I'm also a member of an organisation called MedAct, which is a charity campaigning as health workers for health justice. We've previously spoken at worker meetings urging you, as our representatives, to find solutions to the current bus network, which is failing local people every day. I'm here on behalf of our organisation to once again ask you to take this issue seriously and to take the opportunity to help Bristol and the South West become a happier and healthier place by investigating franchising the bus network. We've presented to you before, and they're worth stating again, the shocking statistics that show how improving public transport is an urgent and serious healthcare issue, because in its current state, it is worsening health inequalities and damaging the lives of people. The 2019 report from the Docklands Youth Centre in St Paul's stated the shameful reality that 47% of our young people suffer with asthma, compared to a national average of 10%. Furthermore, on high pollution days in Bristol, there are 4 more cardiac arrests, 9 more admissions for stroke, and 12 more children admitted with asthma symptoms, of which 5 will have to stay in hospital. But poor public transport doesn't just result in more people admitted to hospital. It's also contributing to devastating levels of social isolation and loneliness epidemic, with people stranded, unable to move across the city and access essential services. Being failed by the buses is a real, serious and significant cause of stress and anxiety in people's lives, worsening mental health for many. I moved to Bristol about 5 years ago now, and have always been disappointed that this famously environmentally conscious city has such terrible public transport. Without a car, I rely exclusively on it, which means joining many others sat at bus stops, waiting for buses that never come, late to work or placement, or desperate to go home at the end of long working days. And I regularly meet patients across the region who are forced to spend what amounts to hundreds of pounds every month on taxis to get to regular appointments too, because buses are simply non-existent in their area. The frustration and anger people feel was shockingly evident when we held a transport clinic in Kingswood on the 10th of February. We spoke to local residents about their experiences, and despite knowing it was an issue that people care about, I was genuinely taken aback at the almost universal anger at its failings. I was genuinely taken aback. Taking buses is seen as a nightmare, with residents left with no alternatives to the car, but many don't have that luxury. Buses are seen as unreliable, expensive, and constantly being cut. And the Labour candidate who won the by-election in Kingswood agrees that change is needed, saying that Labour will reform our broken system and hand power and control of our services back to local communities. The current bus network is a startling failure of this region, but a failure that thankfully has a clear solution. Franchising could improve services by increasing democratic control over prices and routes, ultimately improving the health of citizens by reducing air pollution, decreasing vehicle collisions, improving access to services, and reducing that isolation. Franchise public networks in London, Manchester, and soon to be Liverpool, and most recently West Yorkshire, show that franchising is a really real and exciting alternative that can make a significant and tangible improvement to people's health and happiness now and in the future. And I urge you not to waste any more time and enact change now to repair this region's failing public transport network. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Georgia. Look, very good points made. I'd simply say about franchising, it's slightly more complicated for our region. We're not like other regions. We're not exactly the same, so it's not easy to take the things they're doing and put them in place. Also, huge resources are required. But there is a paper that's being worked on that will be published hopefully very soon that will start this discussion, because it's an important debate to have, and we've got to work out what we can do, if anything, on the franchising model that meets the challenges that you've raised very clearly in your speech. So thank you very much. Okay, now I've got two other people who may or may not be here, so I'm just going to check before we move on. Is Brendan Taylor here or Ian Becky here?
Brendan was coming down.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, Brendan used the wheelchair, as you know him.
Right. I do.
No bus stop anywhere near where Brendan can get to.
Yeah.
He rang me, I told Jill a few minutes ago, he couldn't get here.
Yeah.
What I would ask you, he's losing his bus service. He's on the number 3, and it's a plea from a disabled person who uses public transport, uses the trains as well. That he will not have a bus service.
Can we have you come over to the microphone so people can...
That takes him across to Cribbs Causeway and through to Avonmouth
They're going to give you a microphone, David, because they're worried people online can't hear you. Everyone
Sorry.
in the room can hear you,
I
but not
apologise
online.
again.
No, don't apologise. It's all right.
Brendan Taylor is a disabled gentleman who only found out just when Tina and I found out that this venue is not on a public transport network, and the nearest point he could get to was either the Mail or Patchway Station Metro bus stop. He uses a wheelchair and it's too far for him to come with his medical condition. He's losing his public bus service from the 7th of next month. That's the link, the number 3 that goes across North Bristol. He was going to ask you, actually, see if you could put some extra night services through Sharhampton, Seamills and Avonmouth, not reduce it back to just one bus, the number 4. He's very upset that the council... No, actually, the Combined Authority hasn't used its powers under the Transport Act 985/2017 to tender a service to replace that service or seek another operator in the form of Stagecoach or Transformer to replace the service. The replacement, as we discussed at South Gloucestershire Council, Dan, is 5 buses a day between Cribs Causeway and Avonmouth, one of which is 5 a.m. in the morning. It is really devastating. It's Don Alexander's patch that's lost its buses. And he's got the local railway stations, but he can't get round because there's no Henbury Loop service round. That's going to go to Henbury to begin with, which is welcome. But please, disabled people, all he asks you, can you employ an equalities officer, and can we make sure Democratic Services and the Chief Executive doesn't book venues with no buses? Otherwise, it makes a mockery of this is the Transportation Authority. Thank you.
Well, David, I'll certainly be asking about the venues in future to make sure that we sort that one out. And you. Well, that's good to know. You raised the issue about the Equalities Officer earlier in the week, and my Chief Executive heard that, and he said that is in train. So he's heard it again, and we're looking forward to that Equalities Officer being there as soon as possible because it's important. I agree. Okay? Thank you. Right, the next is item 7. Thank you, everybody who spoke just then. Fantastic. And we're now moving to item 7, which is comments from the Chair of the Local Enterprise Partnership. So, Richard, over to you, please.
Chair, thank you very much. First of all, we would just like to start with a thank you to you, Marvin, for your service through the 8 years of your morality and the work you've done with the Local Enterprise Partnership. I think the efforts that have been delivered to drive the economy and to tackle the deep inequalities that exist across our region have been a pleasure to work with you. And I think the outcome at Temple Quarter, that we're starting to see a project that the LEP really kicked off with other leaders in 2010, 2011, is testament to a lasting legacy that will benefit the whole region. So thank you very much, and we wish you well with whatever comes next. If I just move on to the matters in the agenda today, I'll start with the transformation programme. And I think with many people we were disappointed that the authority received a best value notice. We do recognise, however, that the West of England is an amazing place and there is a lot for us to shout about, and we can't lose sight of that. I'm pleased that the paper and the letter did highlight many of the positive decisions that have been made here in the committee, particularly over the last year or so, and that is a point that we need to keep reminding ourselves that there is progress to be made, and we are making progress. The LEP Board are committed to playing our part to support and deliver the improvements that we all want to see. And I'm pleased to see that there is ongoing progress across the transformation programme that's set out in the paper. Nonetheless, we know we have some tough issues left to address, and working out how we deal with our differences and the responsibilities that we have towards improving the outcomes for the West of England continue to be very important, and hopefully we can continue to build our approach around a place-first-based approach. The LEP Board members were pleased to see the positive tone, though, that committee members have taken in the public responses to the notice, and the commitment to work together is vital for our success. We're ready to work with you and the Independent Improvement Panel and the leaders to move forwards, and we welcome the next steps. Moving on to the employment and skills agenda item and strategic working approach and the funding request, we're really delighted to see a large-scale sum of money, £15.6 million, on the papers today. It is critical for the well-being of our economy and the well-being of our people, actually, that we support residents not covered by mainstream education and skills funding. I'm really pleased that the LEP board, through our colleagues Joanne Rumley and Chris Greer, have been involved in the development of the skills programmes across the region through their work in co-chairing the Employment and Skills Advisory Panel. And we are committed to continuing to support the Combined Authority where we can to ensure that employers are involved in supporting our young people to access the opportunities available to them. And indeed, your school summit this week, I was really pleased to see the number of employers supporting you. That was pleasing to see. With regards to the climate and ecological strategy and the action plan, as we can see from the papers, we continue to make a really important difference. And we're seeing some significant steps towards our net zero and nature recovery ambitions. Great work is happening across the region that's helping businesses to decarbonise and support our nature recovery. One strong example is the work starting with the Innovate UK funding to help decarbonise the Bristol Port area. And from a nature recovery perspective, we're going to be the first to go to public consultation on our new local nature recovery toolkit. This is a really exciting piece of work, and it will help everyone in the region, including businesses, to know what they can do to help to support a nature recovery and particularly channel the investment towards nature. However, we also have a long way to go, and the pace that we are moving at is perhaps not fast enough. The paper highlights the work that is underway to build a scale of investment across 3 areas around decarbonisation, supporting a nature recovery, and helping to build the resilience to the impacts of climate change. And we look forward to seeing more on that in June when further papers are presented. And again, we know that actually dealing with climate resiliency is critical. The ability to bring funding in from many sources is going to be the way that we need to create the momentum. With regards to the investment fund, to wrap up, I'm pleased to see that the digital office proposal is in the paper for the investment fund. This scheme will help to boost the delivery of our West of England digital plan, connecting people, making good on the commitments that we have set out to tackle digital exclusion, to boost our economy and to make sure that digital transformation has a positive impact for residents and businesses so they can support the access and services that are so greatly needed. So thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Richard. Appreciate it as always. Now, the next item is item 8, comments from the Authorities Overview and Scrutiny Committee. Ed is here. Ed, do you wish to speak?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Norris. So the Best Value Notice received from Government on Tuesday the 5th of March is the key current issue for the Combined Authority. It's a disappointing but unsurprising development, and we believe it to be a much-needed wake-up call. We asked the Mayor what he'd do differently, and he rightly emphasised the need for everyone to work on relationships and the need for a reset. We don't agree with the Mayor's express claim at Scrutiny Committee that the current problems are historic, dating from 18 to 24 months ago. In fact, to claim that this seems to point to a lack of ownership with the current problems. Both the Scrutiny Committee and the Audit Committee have been remarking for some time now that we've seen good progress on the transformation programme where it's in the gift of officers to make progress, but we've seen little progress on the 2 outstanding statutory recommendations raised by the auditors in November 2022. We heard no specific commitments from the Mayor to do anything differently. In actual fact, he went on to use very combative language about relationships with unitary authorities. As such, the Mayor's answers didn't give us any clear plan of action of how he will walk towards a reset, nor assurance that he will take a conciliatory approach to resolving either strategic or operational issues. I think it's extremely important to mention that each of the parties must accept the need for a reset of working relationships, for a reform of the Constitution, and for the need to take a collective approach to this, in particular to make use of the support, facilitation and mediation offered. We want to play a positive role as Audit and Scrutiny in the process. We want to consider the impact of the imminent new system in Bristol, which will be more transparent and deliberative and may actually necessitate the need for change. And we re-emphasise the need to move at pace and deliver quick wins wherever possible to build trust incrementally. On other issues, we were very pleased to see the results of the Citizens Panel, which looks like it's been very well run, and we look forward to seeing how this will influence the choices being made to support bus services. We welcome the proposed multi-year investment in a new employment and skills fund, as Richard said, £15 million, which looks like it can be very well invested. We did mention that we suggest that equality, diversity and inclusion needs to be a key focus, as well as developing the skills of people who may want to be self-employed, both of which can really help to tackle deprivation. We note the wide-ranging programme to deliver the climate emergency strategy and strongly agree with the need to develop a carbon accounting or measurement process as soon as possible to assist with the goal of achieving net zero by 2030. This should apply not only to the combined authorities' operations, but for all proposed projects that it commissions or delivers directly. We note the delivery assurance processes being put in place and how difficult it will be to demonstrate the impact of this, as projects inevitably will continue to slip and budgets will be under pressure, even if the process is highly successful. So because of this counterfactual element, we welcome the proposed internal audit of the process and encourage a capacity building approach to be taken alongside an inspectorial one. And actually, with listening to Bobby Oliver just now, I reiterate the need for more performance information to be made available through this committee. For example, we have little accessible information about how the community transport grants are being invested, and I think it would be a useful thing in every committee to have some performance information and key performance indicators put out in the public domain for everyone to see. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ed. The next item is item 9, comments from the Authorities Audit Committee. Jeff is here as well. Jeff, do you wish to speak today?
I do indeed. Thank you, Dan. First point to mention is that although this is my report, it's been agreed unanimously by all members of the Audit Committee, cross-party and cross-authority, and I know that goes for Ed's report as well. I want to start with a housekeeping matter. The Audit Committee have endorsed the appointment of Christine Fraser and Jennifer Whitten as additional independent members, and we're asking the committee at its AGM to confirm those appointments for an initial term of 4 years and 3 years respectively. The skill sets they bring will enhance the Audit Committee and most particularly, to put your mind at rest, will strengthen even further the apolitical nature of the committee by bringing those skills. I then wanted to move on to the comment about the last WECA committee when you raised concerns about confidentiality. You and I met with my Deputy Chairman, David Wilcox, and we've since discussed the matter with Audit Committee, and I just wanted to reassure you, although it shouldn't come as a surprise, the Audit Committee confirmed categorically that it took confidentiality very seriously. It also confirmed that if there was ever a deliberate breach of such confidentiality, the committee would expect the matter to be referred directly to the monitoring officer. However, I would add, if there was no evidence, making an allegation in public was not appropriate, as it damaged the authority as well as the integrity of the committee. Now, I then wanted to move on to the transformation programme, and clearly the best value notice is very relevant to that, but the Audit Committee discussed the transformation report before it was amended for the best value notice. And I did just want to emphasise that Audit Committee in March 23 was reporting concerns about Statutory Recommendation 1 of improving working relationships and Recommendation 2 on the Constitution. We actually said that a specific timeline had to be established for addressing each area of weakness. The work must now be treated as the highest importance in view of the best value notice. Now, if you roll forward to January 24, we actually said then we were disappointed to note that whilst the issues in the transformation programme that relate to officers are making progress, those that relate specifically to the mayor and leaders are not. We've repeatedly emphasised the importance of co-working and emphasised that the MCA has to work with a consensus. We warned in January 24 that if the MCA and the Metro Mayor are incapable of solving those issues very quickly, the solution will be taken out of the MCA's hands. We've seen that direction of travel now, and therefore the importance of dealing with this just cannot be overstressed. The Audit Committee welcomed the fact that the leaders have arranged a meeting to discuss strategy and purpose. But I have to say, Dan, we were concerned that it had taken 15 months to arrange an hour-long meeting when so much officer time had been invested in this work already. You know we've talked a lot about relationships at meetings. We particularly ask, this is a cross-audit committee request, to end the practice of long adjournments and short notice tabled amendments at this meeting, as this makes proceedings extremely hard to follow, even for those of us who are relatively informed on what's going on, but to anybody else, nigh on impossible. We welcome the fact that Overview and Scrutiny are undertaking a review of the Constitution. We ask that particular attention is given on call-in arrangements and terms of reference for committees. And what I will say overall, I hope you appreciate I've edited a lot of my notes to make this a little bit briefer. Overall, as well as being disappointed at the lack of progress from the political leadership, we can't emphasise enough that we're disappointed that Audit Committee's comments have repeatedly been ignored, so it seems, by this committee. And I'm reassured, but actually really disappointed, that it requires DLUC to have taken those comments and re-emphasise them in their best value notice. There's a real urgency to grasp, and there is a real need for the political leadership to come from this committee to take things forward. And I'll just add, it's not, I don't believe Ed and I expect you all to agree on everything. Far from it. Of course you're going to have differences, but there are still ways of resolving and taking forward, and it's really important that leadership is given. Just a couple of other points. We looked at health and safety policies at our last audit committee meeting. We were very keen to keep that as an important issue. We think it should be coming to this committee from time to time, so there's progress and reports because it's so significant. Audit committee has carried out its annual review, which will be reported to your main committee in June. We also had a report on lessons learnt updates on both birthday buses and Westlink. Now, the committee appreciated the attempts to provide something innovative and asked specifically that data gathering is used to inform future decision making. But members were concerned that there was insufficient clarity on key performance indicators before these projects were undertaken, with too much emphasis placed on Department for Transport requirements and not enough attention to value for money indicators. What this meant is that it took longer to identify inappropriate trends in usage and demographics, which could and should have been spotted sooner. The other point, which I think Ed's also alluded to, is that it's really important that this committee has reports on performance on projects from time to time, not just involved in making the decisions. And we recognise your agendas are so full that you don't have time after the decisions have been taken to go on and receive those reports. But actually, again, in terms of political leadership, it is fundamental that they come to leaders, you note them, you identify messages which you may see differently to your officers who are looking at them, and that it's recorded that that is happening as a key part of governance. I'm sorry I've gone on so long, but there are so many issues coming up, and Audit Committee, along with Scrutiny, hope that we can really help with the independent panel to take this forward. And we share your views, and I'm sure it's the whole committee's views, about the real potential for WECA, and we want to play our part in helping to deliver that. But the advice that we and others give has also got to be taken. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Jeff, for that. I guess what I'd say to you about that is, when I talk to you individually and the others individually, we all say very similar things. We also got to get on better together. We describe the problems pretty similarly and the challenges pretty similarly. But as I've said to you fairly recently, Jeff, when we met a couple of weeks ago, I think it was, the difficulty is, how do we actually have strategies? What do we do to make those relationships better? Because we're identifying the problems, but we're not finding well enough solutions. So I welcome your comment about we won't always agree, because I think that's a context we've got to respect and understand, because we are politically very balanced in our combined authority. It is not an accident that the two combined authorities that have these notices are both very finely balanced. That's because there's disagreement, and it plays out in these committees, plays out by the journalists like Alex I can see over there, understandably reporting those differences. Other regions, admittedly, where they tend to have stronger majorities, don't argue, or at least not openly so much, but they do seem to have a discipline because they respect their regions. And that has to be part of a solution, I think. We have to agree what the purpose of the combined authority is more clearly, because I suspect if we can do that, then the other things that we're all seeking will probably flow from that. And I welcome the intervention as it happens, because I think that if it's genuinely objective and well-intended, it could be extremely helpful to us. And we must take advantage of that now that that's happening. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Can I just add, though, that in that context, and I'm sat here opposite Marvin, and it's probably accepted that we don't always completely agree on issues, but as a Bristol councillor, I would recognise that Marvin is the leader of our authority and is representing us. So, therefore, I would recognise that there is a need, and there will be different interests geographically, there will be different interests demographically, but that discussion taking place is part of the proper public accountability, and no reasonable council members are going to object to there being differences of opinion as long as that debate takes place. But the pragmatic solutions, which is what a large part of local government is always about, is the key proof that it really works. And that's a hard one to put key performance indicators against, but it's actually the proof that everybody's working together by sharing, and that end aim to get the better outcomes that we're looking for. And I think I would certainly say that cross-party backbenchers across all the constituent members share that view. I'm pretty sure the leaders do as well. So therefore, the challenge which has to be put back to the committee is how do we deliver that?
Thank you very much indeed, Jeff. And I'd simply add to that, look, it's clearly your job to focus in on these issues, same with Ed and with his hat on. But I just want to put it in some context. We have got a huge amount of money in recent years. We have this great opportunity. The arguments are a consequence of us working out what we do with that money and how we do it well. That's a great place to actually be. What we have to do is take out the difficult bits and carry on with the positive bits so we can deliver for our region and the people who we represent, because that's the most important thing of all. Okay, thank you. All right, the next item, item 10, is the transformation programme. So we now turn to that, of course, and last week the West of England Combined Authority received a best value notice. It points to the improvements that we have already made and rightly says we need to go further. For example, agreeing the role and purposes of the Combined Authority with a refreshed regional strategy. We need to review the Constitution, and it highlights the ongoing challenge in all our relationships, but I remain optimistic. I take this best view notice seriously. I will redouble my efforts to ensure the Combined Authority delivers on our regional priorities, as I mentioned to your committees earlier this week. A meeting that has been in all our diaries for some time on the role and purpose of the Combined Authority is taking place next week. Jeff alluded to it. Additionally, we will be soon consulting on regional strategy, and further information will be shared about this soon. There has also been significant reduction in the use of interim resources, so that at the moment we have 8 of our 10 roles within the corporate leadership are now held by permanent employees, and that's something I know that Jeff and others have mentioned in the past. So I want to flag up where there is progress. I'm pleased that since I was elected, the Combined Authority has, among many things, established a 60 million green recovery fund, bringing lots of match funding in as well, which is obviously important. Secured £95 million for the Bristol Temple Quarter that was referred to earlier too, and secured £540 million for transport infrastructure, which is the biggest per person settlement of that type. However, there's always more work to do. I think we're all agreed, and I look forward to working with our regional partners and the Independent Improvement Board, because I think this is a challenge we can rise to and we can meet. It just takes us all to now find that way through. And I wish us well, and I wish everybody involved well, because the price or the prize is so big and so positive, we daren't fail. Okay, so I now want to move the recommendations as set out in the report. Can I call for a seconder, please?
My understanding is we're noting this item, but I was expecting that we were all going to have the opportunity to speak on it. I don't think we need to move as a second, do we? It's just for noting.
Okay. So, in that case, do any members wish to speak to this item? Yeah. Okay. Claire, thanks.
So yeah, since we took the administration in South Gloucestershire, we've been committed to improving the relationship with the Combined Authority and have been working positively to try to address the governance and collaboration issues. There have been a number of improvements over the last year. For example, a forward plan of key decisions is now published, and those leading the unitary authorities meet with WECA officers ahead of the committee meetings. However, more work is needed to develop a joint regional strategy and improve how we work to deliver this. So we welcome the appointment of an independent panel to help us address the remaining issues, and we look forward to continuing to engage positively with our West of England partners and the panel for the benefit of our residents. I think it's fair to say that some of the biggest challenges we've faced over the last year or so relate to buses, and in particular the BSIP decision at the July 2022 committee, which delegated all decisions on how the funding is spent to the Director of Infrastructure at the Combined Authority in consultation with their counterpart at North Somerset Council. So I very much welcome that earlier in the meeting that you said that you'll be writing to the Department for Transport to ask for an extension so that the decision on the resubmission can come back to this committee, and I think that's very important as part of rebuilding trust and relationships in line with the issues set out in the best value notice. And I would say that if for any reason we get a negative reply to that, I would ask that a special meeting is scheduled so that it can come to the committee, because regardless of how it happens, it does need to come to the committee. Also, at previous committee meetings, we just discussed delegations and requested that, as a matter of principle, there should be a safety valve mechanism to return decisions to committee in the very exceptional circumstances where officers are unable to reach consensus. Because as democratically elected leaders, the WECA committee has the ultimate responsibility for regional decisions that impact our residents, communities and places. So I recognise that monitoring officers are still working on this issue. However, as part of the constitutional review and as now identified by the best value notice, I would ask that this issue is now addressed as a matter of priority. Finally, on a positive note, I've seen that obviously we've got the appointment for the long-awaited leaders and mayors facilitated workshop next week, and I look forward to attending this important meeting to start the conversation about our shared ambitions for the region and improving our ways of working going forward.
Thank you, Claire. Manda, do you wish to speak on this? Thank you.
I do, thank you. Thank you very much. I want to echo a lot that has been said earlier, both by my colleague, Councillor Young, and also Councillor Plowden and Councillor Gollop. I think we have been given an opportunity here to see how we can reset and do things better for the whole of the West of England Combined Authority. One of the things that we thought that we could say that would make an immediate impact in how we all work together is if pretty urgently we could all get a list of how you expect us to be able to input into both the terms of reference and the makeup of the independent committee. Our working assumption is this is going to be done similarly to how it was in Cambridge and Peterborough, but it would be quite nice to get some clarity about how we as a team can all work together to make sure that this starts off at the right point and doesn't go down a route that we don't all particularly want to happen. As was seen by a lot of the public speakers, and as has been mentioned quite often, but buses are important, not only because buses are important, but I think they also have highlighted a way that we probably could and should have worked better together. So although I welcome the fact that we're asking for a committee meeting, I think it's absolutely vital that we have a committee meeting before the next BSIP funding is put in, and that may well get pushed back. What I'm concerned about is when we will get chance to have any meaningful input into that, because it's not good enough for this to come to a committee with us having 2 or 3 days before it's due to go into the DFT. All of us have got people that we need to consult with, whether it be our ward councillors, whether it be our parish councils, whether it be our community groups, whether it be our interest groups, so that between us we can all say that what we're putting forward for the next BSIP funding, which is currently the only way we're going to be able to address the issues that were so eloquently brought up by the public members, is something that we all feel ownership of and signed up to. I don't want to start my first meeting at this on a negative front, but there are some examples of where this has been done less than optimally, and unfortunately, not only has it led to some fairly unpleasant meetings, way more importantly, it's led to us not delivering the best outcomes that we can for our communities. I saw and welcome the fact that we've moved very much in favour of having fewer interims and now having more permanent staff. And please don't take this personally, Mr. Ennis. It's absolutely not personal, but it would be nice to have a timetable for when we also could move to getting a permanent chief executive. And I believe we do have some outstanding recommendations from the Overview and Scrutiny panel that are historical, so are looking back on how previous decisions have been made. And I think it is quite important we don't lose that we actually look at that as well as focus on what we do in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Marvin.
Thanks very much. So yeah, thanks very much, Tina, and so forth. Just, I said I would do 2 terms, so I've been emotionally prepared for this moment for about 7 years. 2 terms is enough for me, and I think every place should reinvent itself every now and again. Anyway, so actually, but on the point of relationships, there are layers to this whole question on relationships. Firstly, no, I don't think we build relationships in an abstract, right? We don't just sit around. Our job is not here just to come and sit around a campfire, sing Kumbaya, and like each other. I think we build relationships when we have a task, when we know what we are all trying to do, and when we get agreement in the sequence within which the things we're trying to get done is laid out. I used to play a lot of rugby. You don't build camaraderie in a rugby team just by sitting in the change room and chatting. You build it by going on the team and trying to do the same thing. And I think the principle still stands. One of the things I think that we do need to urgently do is be very clear with each other and with the region is what's our theory of change, right? What are we trying to get done? What do we need to do to get that thing done? And what's the sequence of big things we need to deliver to get to that outcome over whether it be 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, although I think we should be working, particularly with urban areas and the scale of our city region economy, we should be working on a 20, 25 year horizon anyway. And I think that it's worth pointing out that whatever challenges there are in relationships are not new, right? We've had challenges in various forms in the Combined Authority since the very beginning. And it's also important to recognise that within that mix, there have been good relationships. I mean, got on very well with Tim Warren, got on well with Toby, with Matt Riddle, Nigel Ashton. We have had, and obviously got on well with Kevin. I nearly forgot Kevin's name now. He'd be mad at me. So we've had there are good relationships in which we sit around the table and trying to work out how we deliver the goals that we've collectively identified. I think it's worth saying and restating that we all want the Combined Authority to work. Right? You said, Dan, there's a big prize, right? And we want to receive that prize. And when we set the Combined Authority up, and we've said this before in meetings, we didn't set it up so we could have this meeting for 4 or 5 hours on a Friday afternoon. We set it up because the DCLG, as it was then, Secretary at the time, Sajid Javid, was very clear. You don't have to do it, but if you do it, you will get access to decision making and you'll get access to money, right? And there's the reality. If we don't do something, the world still changes around us, and other places we're going to be setting up their combined authorities to access what is still a financial environment that we existing at the local authority level, in which finance is short-term, is unpredictable, and importantly for us to realise, is competitive. Government will often say, here's a pot of money, there you go everyone, fight for that. And if you're not in the running and you don't get it, you get nothing. So we have to build a a way of working together that puts us in the best position to get that chunk of money. Now, obviously, the conversation is how do we change the very nature of that financial framework within which you operate, because that's no way to run a country. You want, the same way as I talk about doing it locally, you want a coherent national strategy that says, this is where we're trying to get to. This is a sequence of investable propositions that we want to deliver in the name of getting there over the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years. You don't have to work with that competition because everyone knows what the plan is. But nonetheless, we are in it, and so we set ourselves up to put us in the best possible position to access that finance. And I will share, in Bristol City Council, the vote to support a combined authority creation was overwhelming in absolute numbers, but individual councillors were often split within themselves, 49, 51%. They weren't a fan, but they saw this was the only game in town, so we have to do it. And everyone was on that very tight-roped balance within them. So I think it's about attracting money and power to the region. But again, where is the money and power going to come? The money and power is going to come to those places that are putting out big, ambitious goals that contribute to the national priorities. And what's the national priorities, right? Grow the economy in an inclusive, sustainable way. So we've got to generate growth because people need jobs, but we need to, as someone mentioned earlier on, we've got to do jobs. I think you, Rich, we don't want money racing off over the hill as we've historically had with some trickle down with a couple of equalities projects tacked on to the end. Building into the very nature of the way we do economic development, inclusion, tackling inequality, deprivation. But importantly, as we've increasingly realised, to the point of urgency, emergency over the last few years, making sure that the very nature of that growth is actually not making the planet less likely to be able to host human beings in the future. As my chief of staff is often keen of saying, it's not the end of the planet will survive. The question is whether we will be able to survive on it. So how we unlock that. And I think that the money will go to those areas that are showing really clear ambition and creating an environment in which public and private investors feel confident that they've got the political support and the place support, because that will reduce risk in what is already a risky venture. And it's important we get our heads around that, because as we don't, other areas will, and they will move away from us. Dare I put a few things on the ticket, which I think continues to do, right? Firstly, housing. It's the crises. If you talk to Maria Kane at North Bristol Trust, recruiting and retaining health workers is difficult, to put it mildly. People moving to Chepstow, Newport, we can't have that, right? And the success of our economy, we got obviously a lot of Londoners moving to Bristol and retaining, I'm not being anti-Londoner, but the success of our economy brings people in, it drives up house prices, we're trying to build them at a rate of knots, but the city region economy cannot be sustained on individual authorities building the houses. We have to find some way of working as a region to meet our housing needs and meet with the quantum that we meet, but also, dare I suggest, that we might think about as a region as to how we support each other, tackle the private rented sector in particular as well, and make obviously not just the volume of homes, we need to work together to build the social value, the council homes as well, that people are going to need. But house building should be on every agenda for us because it's the crisis of the moment. Transport as well. Again, our population is going to grow. Bristol, as I repeatedly say, Bristol's got 470, probably 5,000 people at the moment. When I was elected, we were 460. By 2050, we're predicted to be 550,000 people, right? If we don't build the infrastructure, it will not stop population growth. It will just grow around us. And if we haven't got the homes, we don't have the transport, we'll just deal with the consequences of having a growing population without adequate infrastructure to service that population. Dare I say, it would be great if we had a transport system that moved masses of people around the area. Let me think what that might be like. And I'm not going to go into underground, overground, but what I will say, it needs to be able to go through the densest parts of the city without the need to close the major arterial roads. All right? Trying to come up Gloucester Road and Church Road and close that off during construction would be economically catastrophic, and I would just say politically and legally impossible to deliver. So we're either going to have a solution or we're not, but again, it should be on every agenda. a big challenge for us as well is flood defence. When we think about climate change, it's about doing the work to decarbonise the economy and protect nature, but also we've got to do the work of adaptation. We are having more extreme weather. The big two tests on I'm going to use the term urban here because it's obviously my world, is heat and water, all right? Our city centre, central part of the Bristol, if we could put adequate flood defence in, and it's not cheap, we're talking £200 million plus, and the longer we leave it, the more expensive it becomes, is about 13,000 homes had it in, all right? So we've got to think seriously, and again, it needs to be on the agenda. What are we doing to get there? In the name of inclusive economic development, I will say this is an area in which we think Combined Authority has done well, and hats off to Stephen Bashford on this front. We even just the other day we met with a load of developers for Western Harbour, for Temple Quarter, and what was really rich actually was the number of big businesses that want to do inclusion. And what we talked to them about was, could they take some of their CSR money, put it in a pot, add it to our public money, and create, with City of Bristol College, for example, a hub that they could then dip into so that people from margins, as it were, who might have extra challenges, get the emotional and skill support to be able to enter the work opportunities that are going to be created by the billions of pounds worth of regeneration that are coming through to down our pipeline. In terms of our Combined Authority itself, there's two aspects I think we need to address that are really incredibly important. One is internal, and this is we got to put this stuff on the table. We are the city, and our partners are quite rural in their nature. We have to find a way of not talking about rural and village towns or cities as the national framework. We are both, and we are interdependent, right? So we, within that long-term strategy, we have to find a way of saying, what does it look like? So for transport, for example, we don't just want to get people into Bristol. Once they're there, they need to be able to move around without the city clogging up, killing our air quality. So again, good quality public transport from rural to urban, from urban to rural, but within the urban sector as well, and importantly, as we know, between rural areas as well. So that comprehensive view of what of what we do, but that rural-urban relationship is important. And I will say that, again, with Toby, talking with Toby in previous incarnations, it was great that we were able to say, all right, this is the goal. I'm not going to talk about the goal, but Toby, this is where we're trying to get to. Your preferred options are not Bristol's. Bristol's preferred options are not yours. But how do we work through this? And it was good. All right, we worked through. We identified a solution. Anyway, secondly is our relationships outside, and I think one is Combined Authority's relationship with government, but also we have another vehicle around us, Western Gateway. How do we work effectively with Western Gateway and draw on that additional political firepower, I think, that comes with the potential of that link up with Cardiff as another core city, and obviously the M4 corridor down into South Wales as well, with the support of Welsh government as well. That's something we need to have some clarity around and define. And I will say as well, Western Gateway is good in that sense. It was organic, it was locally birthed by us, it's cross-party, and it's rural-urban. So actually, when we presented and when the minister started to come down to get involved, there was a real power there. But I just thought I'd just share those few parting words. But I just think we just absolutely need to grab our hands on this. Combined Authority cannot just be a funding pot that the constituent authorities bid into to fund community projects. We are dealing with a multi-billion-pound economic city region, and we need to put plans in place and work together as though we are working with a multi-billion-pound economic regions. We can't just have that funding pot mentality, competitive mentality, collection of relationships as we go forward. Thanks.
Thank you very much indeed, Mark. Thank you. Okay, so we've got 3 items to note. Can I just put those to you? Item 1 to note. Is that noted? Yeah. Item 2 noted, please. Thank you. Item 3, is that noted as well? Not surprisingly, it is. Okay, thank you very much. We now move to item 11, which is governance update, which is to update the member code of conduct, adopt complaints procedure, and appoint a panel of independent persons whose role is to assist in dealing with the code of conduct. Now, I need to declare a conflict of interest because the people who are being appointed are the people who may, if I have a complaint against me, so clearly I don't want to be involved in that. I want to be at arm's length from that. So could I ask if there are any leaders here who could chair the meeting while I remove myself from this item, please? You happy to do it? Okay. Well, that's how I see it, so I'm moving myself out of it. Dan, have you got a script for Claire?
I'm
sort you out now.
Yeah, if you take the chair and once the mayor recuses himself, I can give you.
So yes, I haven't now got the papers in front of me. Excuse me.
I've got some here for you.
I'll grab mine.
Okay.
Right.
So the straightforward advice is that the remaining members of the committee have no conflict in this matter and can proceed to debate and vote on the recommendations in front of you. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. So do I have somebody? Sorry. Apologies. Sorry, we'll try that again. So, Amanda, you're happy to propose recommendations? Do I have a seconder? Well, I was going to ask for those first, and then. Oh,
This is for the code of conduct.
the code of conduct, yes.
Yeah, happy to do that.
Okay. Did anybody wish to make any comments, Amanda?
Thank you very much, Chair. Yes, very, very, very supportive of this. It will get us to a position that's similar actually to a lot of the constituent unitary authorities, so it's something that needs to be done. Looking at the people who are appointing, two of the independent people are already appointed by Baines, and they bring a wealth of experience. And you have, in fact, already, I think, borrowed some of their expertise up till now. So incredibly supportive of this. The one comment I would make is that certainly looking to the future, it would be good if we could ensure during our processes that we end up with a slightly more diverse committee than what we currently have. As I'm at pains to point out, this is not a criticism at all of any of the individuals who we're appointing, but they are all very representative of just one demographic. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Marvin, did you wish to say anything? That's okay. Okay. Yeah, I absolutely agree with the points made about diversity of the members. So we've got a proposal and a seconder. So
3 recommendations. You can take them individually or all together. It's up to you.
yes, so happy to take all the recommendations together. So all those in favour? And that's unanimous. Thank you.
Yes. Bear with us one moment while the mayor is brought back into the room. Thank you.
Okay, thank you ever so much, Claire, for doing that. Sorry to put you in that position. Okay, we're now moving to item 12, delivering the Employment and Skills Plan and the Employment and Skills Fund. Now, this is really good news for everyone in our region, of course, and we are creating an Employment and Skills Fund of £15 million. The fund will provide 50,000 people with high-quality careers advice and support, help over 35,000 people access new training, support 218,000 young people to plan their routes into employment, and continues to support all 97 secondary schools, allowing them to improve the quality of their careers provision and engagement with employers. And we saw some of that happening at the schools event that I was holding this week. We look forward to seeing the benefits of this investment brings to our region. And I would now like to move the 4 recommendations as set out in the report. So first of all, can I call for a seconder? Who would like to do that, please? Okay, thank you, Claire. Would you like to speak to that?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, Claire, thank you very much for that.
So yeah, I support this recommendation. Obviously, a 2-year funding award is welcomed as it will provide the continuation of essential skills programmes across the region, and will help us plan the services more effectively and avoid the single-year funding cliff edge that currently affects many of our skills programmes. It'll also enable us to progress work on the wider regional strategy and establish how a future ask for skills funding aligns with the overarching strategic vision for our region, funding priorities, and the role and purpose of the combined authority. I note that at table 6 on page 98, the report provides a breakdown of funding by the combined authority, unitary authority, and mayoral priority skills fund, but it doesn't provide a breakdown of funding to individual UAs. It's important to ensure adequate funding will be awarded to the unitary authorities, as we are responsible for delivering the majority of skills programmes on the ground, such as Future Bright, We Work for Everyone, and Skills Connect. I understand the funding breakdown at unitary authority level was shared with us yesterday afternoon. Officers are still working through the figures. I understand that there are some technical details that will need to be worked through via the delegation to directors and CEOs. So for the public record, please can the interim CEO provide me with an assurance that the funding awarded to the unitary authorities will ensure that we are able to maintain existing levels of delivery across all programmes over the 2-year period.
Thanks very much. And for the question, through Chair, I'd say three things really. Look, it's really important we get as much value for money as we can out of this tremendous fund, which hopefully the committee members will support. And the 2-year plan is really, really helpful, I think, for us. Look, we are looking to maintain the existing services, so I can give you that assurance. And I think in particular to the staff that go in and work on these really essential services. Really, that assurance is there as well. I would say a third thing as well is that Stephen Bashford, who's already been name checked quite rightly, will make sure that he and indeed his team work really closely with the unitary authorities and others as appropriate throughout the process, and that means from start to finish in the as we take this further forward as well.
Okay, Claire, have you finished? Thank you. Amanda.
Thank you, Chair. Very supportive of this and also very grateful to hear your answer to Claire's question. It was something that we were also going to raise. Again, I think we're going to go back to the words about collaboration and working together. And on this, as with the transport that we've talked about before, it's crucial that we continue to work collaboratively because the unitary authorities are key in the delivery of this. And we probably understand the needs and strengths and weaknesses in our areas. So collaboration in what we're doing is absolutely crucial, but very, very much welcome this. Thank you.
Thank you, Amanda. Marvin, would you like to speak?
Yeah, thanks very much. We work on the work, as everyone would say, certainty in an uncertain world. Wherever we can provide certainty, we should, and it enables people to plan. I know City of Bristol College, one of the big challenges for them is uncertainty around finance. Some of that can be developed, by the way, by having that relationship with business and the shape of the future economy, so we know what skills are going to be needed by when the opportunities are coming up. Which allows our programs to plan and make sure that we're not just putting people on programs, but we're actually having a pipeline to jobs and economic inclusion. We would just add probably that that we suggest the program be reevaluated after a refresh of the regional strategy to make sure that it all lines up.
Thank you very much, Marvin, and thank you to the other contributors. So we're now coming to the votes on the recommendation. So in that case, can we move to recommendation 1? Can those in favour please show now? Okay, that's carried unanimously. Recommendation 2, those in favour please show now. That's all carried unanimously too. Recommendation 3, those in favour please show now. That's carried unanimously too. And the final recommendation in this section, recommendation 4, all those in favour please show now. That's carried unanimously. Thank you very much indeed. Right, moving on to item 13, Climate and Ecological Strategy and Action Plan Update for 2024. We have had some noticeable successes which we should celebrate, such as planting 42,000 trees, transforming 383 hectares of land to make pollinator friendly. I think there's 2 point something acres in a hectare for those who don't know hectares so well. setting up the green hydrogen plant at IAPS, opening the new station at Portway Park and Ride, and we've set in motion for new initiatives such as getting heat from mines and funding for new community energy generation to replicate the success at Lawrence Western Turbine. However, it's important that we are open about the scale of the challenge. As I said last year, I must repeat, we are not on track to meet our 2030 ambitions. That would require more national action, more investment, more from businesses, people and organisations, and for us to do more ourselves. We will, of course, redouble our efforts. It's important that we do that. I would now like to move the 3 recommendations as set out in the report. So can I have a seconder for that, please? Thank you, Marvin. Do you want to speak on this, Marvin?
Yeah, why not? I think it's looking at some of the context. I would just urge us as a city region to look at how we can take advantage of the Bristol City Leap. And there's a huge. I know that Steve West at UE is really looking at how they link UE up, particularly on some of the heat networks we have. But we have something that is underway within the city. It's got a lot of national and international attention, and drawing on that and thinking about how we might expand it out when there is a call there would probably be a good use of our time. I think there's one of the things said to me in the council chamber was you're not doing anything, all you need is political will, as I often share. Political will is not enough. You need political will and billions of pounds, right? So we are part of City 3CI. You will now be as well, Dan, because the Metro Mayors have signed up to 3CI. That's a collaboration between core cities, I was chairing at the time, London councils, UK Cities Catapult, M10, Scottish Cities Alliance, but now it includes the LGA as well, so we cover a lot of local authorities. And what we've done is work together to develop, to amass a pipeline of investable propositions to decarbonise our own economies, looking at tricky issues like retrofit. Like one of the questions, how do you make a market for retrofit? If you look at a road and only 2 homes on that road will say, yes, we'll go for a retrofit, you can't make a market if it's 2 homes on this road, 3 homes. How do you take 50 roads and offer that to a company to get it done en masse? That's how you make a market. And so we take on challenges like that. Net zero neighbourhoods is one of the issues that we brought through. And what we've done is we've drawn together across our geographical patches £60 billion worth of investable propositions. When you're talking like that, then you can go and begin to mobilise the meaningful sums of public and private sector investment. Probably good for us to have a think about how that actually maps directly onto our combined authority area to make sure that we're bringing our investable propositions into that pot to be trailed and promoted by national government, because we do know, as Mark Carney's pointed out, there is lots of money in the world. We should, despite what is going on with cost of living crisis, there is money. We just need to put ourselves in a position to be able to attract that money. And what they're looking for is investable propositions on a market ready and a political environment that says that de-risks that investment as well. Cannot eliminate risk altogether, but the more stable and coherent we are politically, the less risk there is to that investment. And I'll add just to the celebration. Some members of my cabinet are now out in Avonmouth as well for the wetlands flood defence that we put in place. That's between us and South Gloucestershire. £80 million, 80 hectares of wetland. When I was there, it was still dry because it was just being designed with the trenches. Now it's full of water and slosh and birds and all the environments. Actually, something on our doorstep that actually is of global quality in how we're building our defences to more extreme weather and supporting the recovery of ecology, at the same time.
Thank you, Marvin. Amanda, do you wish to speak?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Interestingly, I have some points to pull out about some of the excellent points in this paper that are about what's happening about the North East Somerset. But of all the papers we have in front of us today, this one to me shows how that the what's the phrase? The whole is greater than the sum of the parts. This is something that absolutely, as West of England Combined Authority, we should be working on and not in any way counter-bidding for different pots of money. But we particularly welcome some of the areas, specifically around the net zero, and bearing in mind what you said, Mayor Norris, yes, there is no plan B on this stuff, and we are not quite on track to deliver it, and it's incumbent on all of us to do what we can to support this. So our green infrastructure projects, a couple of the things that we're proud of are our new nature reserve in Keynsham, and we are partners on the Net Zero project. I always get that wrong. And transport projects as well. I would mention those, wouldn't I, because they're close to my heart, but very specifically Scholars Way, which within Bath will join a lot of our secondary schools and make it easy for pupils not only to cycle to school, but to get in the habit of choosing active travel as they grow up. Very, very much supportive of the proposed funding for Avon Needs Trees. And we're looking forward to seeing more detail, which I believe is coming forward soon, on the corporate carbon management approach and what this may mean for some of our future grant funding. Our final ask is that we are really, really keen and looking forward to June's paper on the scale of the regional investment needed to meet our 2030 targets. And then we can align this with our own work. And again, to the point that has been very eloquently made more than once today, we need, if we don't know where we're trying to get and we don't measure how we're going to try and get there, we're unlikely to be successful.
Thank you, Amanda. Claire.
Thank you, Chair. Absolutely welcome the report. We've got some excellent examples of where the Combined Authority and South Gloucestershire have worked together on, for example, heat from mine workings, which is a very important thing for South Gloucestershire, which has a significant form of mine workings. And it was mentioned earlier, the Western Gateway, and I think we have to recognise it's been an exciting last couple of weeks for the Western Gateway and for delivering future energy needs. And I think we need to make sure that as a combined authority that we are playing our part in that work and are working as an important part of the Western Gateway. Transport has come up today, as it comes up every meeting, because it's an extremely important part of this. But it's not just buses. I think I'd like to highlight the active travel schemes that are happening in South Gloucestershire. We're currently talking to people about the A432 corridor, the Everston Hill Cycleway, and these are all ways that we enable people to get about in ways that don't cause carbon emissions. I would, though, just like to highlight a couple of issues. The report largely commits to measurement, not target setting, which is obviously we've got the Declaration of Climate Emergency, which sets net zero by 2030 as our overall target. I think while we do need to start with measuring anticipated carbon emissions, we need to move urgently to a position where transport projects are required to do more than a modest reduction in embodied carbon during construction, or are deemed to be exempted from achieving net zero, and towards an expectation that all projects will achieve net zero during their design life, and if not, be reconciled against carbon savings coming from their use, in the case obviously of active travel and public transport, or insetting solutions. I'd also like to say it's important we don't forget the nature emergency part of the climate and nature emergency. And on page 150, it talks about the BS19 project. And South Gloucestershire Council has been developing its approach to engaging business with nature, as mentioned in paragraph 38, but has been hampered by the lack of development funding and staff capacity, despite a funding application to the Combined Authority. Given the recent creation of a new dedicated role within the Combined Authority to develop green financial and delivery models, which are outlined on page 150, can I request, therefore, that the Combined Authority provides South Gloucestershire Council with capacity to assist us with launching our innovative ICANN offer, which will enable us to draw private finance into the delivery of green infrastructure.
Thanks very much. Sorry, I hadn't realised you stopped then. Okay, in that case, we have 3 recommendations on which we need to vote, please. So if we go immediately to recommendation 1, those in favour, please show now. Right, that's carried unanimously. Thank you. Recommendation 2, again, could you please show now if you're in favour? Thank you. That's carried unanimously. And the final recommendation in this section, recommendation 3, please show now if you're voting in favour. That's carried unanimously too. Thank you very much indeed, everybody. Item 14 now. We now turn to the investment fund paper, which includes improving digital infrastructure, rolling out West Charge, and upping our climate resilience activities. I'd now like to move to the 4 recommendations. Is there a seconder, please, for that? Go on, Manda. First meeting, second it. Thank you very much indeed. Would you like to speak to it?
I'm not going to thank you, Chair, but no, thank you. Yes, we are supportive. Of course, we are supportive, but do have quite a few comments on various bits within this paper. Digital office is one of the things that we've spoken about, certainly within Baines, and I imagine within all the constituent UAs for a very long time, how important it is to look at how we improve connectivity for all business, for all economic development, but for me, most importantly, to stop any digital divide. Throughout the COVID pandemic, when lockdowns were happening, for me, speaking just purely as a councillor, the stories I heard about people who'd got 3 children at home and had no connectivity whatsoever, and whose children really lost out on 1.5 to 2 years worth of education at what for them was some of their key times, broke my heart. And we are, as Mary says, despite all the absolute problems we've got around the cost of living crisis, there are pots of money available, and for us to set ourselves the target of being one of the more digitally connected combined authorities, I think would be not only good for our communities, but very supported from both our businesses and third sectors. When I'm looking at the electric vehicle infrastructure, incredibly supportive of trying to make this happen as quickly as we can. Green infrastructure implementation is something that, although we are supportive, that one of the things that we really rate in this paper is that delegation has been added, and I think it's something that will come up when we're having all our conversations around maybe constitution and how we all work together, is to look at how the delegation of some of these decisions have been made, and I believe that this is in the investment fund programme paper. We are very, very supportive of a section of the Bristol to Bath strategic corridor. However, this is my strong understanding is that this is an outline business case, and we would really want this to progress. But by saying that, we're not saying that all the details about what's contained in the latest report that came out are things that we think are necessarily best for our community. We saw it on the Thursday before the papers came out. So I had no chance to socialise it with parish councils, ward councillors, etc. So an example that immediately struck us was that we would like to see cycling retained on the Keynsham bypass, and that appears to have disappeared from the latest proposal. So I was going to be supportive of this, but in being supportive and seconding it, please may I make it clear that it's the principle that we are very supportive of, and the actual detail we think does need an awful lot of work. But having said all that, I am very pleased to second this proposal.
Thank you very much, Manda. And I think on that cycle path business on Keynsham bypass there, it's not in stone, it's still a consultation. So just echo that, because actually some of the written questions that I've replied to are about that from one of the councillors in the area. Okay, thank you very much. Claire.
Thank you, Chair. So on recommendation 1, we support the recommendation, but do have some concerns, because £2.5 million is a significant funding award for a pilot project that is coming forward before we've had the wider conversation about the role and purpose of the combined authority and the regional strategy. And in an area where the constituent councils have already undertaken a significant amount of work. So I think it's really important that the combined authority works collaboratively with the unitary authorities to provide capacity and funding to enhance work and programmes already underway, and doesn't seek to duplicate effort, waste public money and reinvent the wheel. So the delegation to directors and CEOs is vital to provide oversight and to ensure that value for money is achieved. So we're pleased that we've got that delegation. And on the third recommendation, absolutely support it. However, I understand that the request from the Joint Green Infrastructure Working Group to the Combined Authority was for administrative support and not to provide leadership, as paragraphs 14 and 15 of the report suggest. So it's appreciated that the Combined Authority requires capacity to play its role in the regional partnership work, but the unitary authorities also need additional core capacity to support the pipeline development, prepare bids, and for partnership work. And I also have concerns with the approach of allocating funding for consultants to prepare the business cases. Short-term development funding for consultant support typically doesn't deliver the engagement, local knowledge, value for money, and the work required to develop green infrastructure and nature recovery programs effectively, and requires significant input and capacity from unitary authority partners to work with the consultants. And they're having to do that without additional core capacity. So within South Gloucestershire Council, funding for the council's work on the green infrastructure is outside of the statutory planning process. It comes from short-term project funding and from an overstretched community infrastructure levy. Given that most green infrastructure projects originate from the UAE either directly or because of extensive collaboration with partners, without the opportunity for support, there may be little that requires leadership or management coordination, as these posts within South Gloucestershire Council are project funded only. We therefore need to ensure the unitary authorities are properly resourced to co-deliver projects effectively. Finally, South Gloucestershire Council has used funding from the Environment Agency's Natural Environment Readiness Fund to develop a natural capital evaluation tool with the intention to deliver the self-same future cost benefit evaluation that is highlighted in paragraph 15. So we suggest the West of England Mayoral Combined Authority doesn't need to independently walk the same path. Again, it's about not reinventing wheels. We've got a possible solution. Let's work together on it.
Sorry, thank you, Claire. Marvin, would you like to speak?
Just a very small one. Again on the rollout of the electric vehicle infrastructure as well. Just bearing in mind that we have LEAP going on in Bristol, City LEAP, and there is a whole strand of work around EV infrastructure within that. So the more alignment we can get, the better for us all. Will happen more efficiently, and we'll get a better return on our finance.
Okay, thank you very much, everybody, and thank you, Marvin, as well. Right, in that case, can we move to the votes? People are happy to do so. So we've got, let me see, 4 recommendations, I think. So let's move to the first one. Those in favour, please show now. Thank you, that's carried unanimously. Recommendation 2, those in favour, please show. Again, carried unanimously. Recommendation 3, please show now. Thank you, that's carried unanimously. And recommendation 4, again, please show now. Thank you very much, everybody. That was carried unanimously too. Okay, moving to item 15, delivery assurance. This is obviously to consider the changes to schemes within the investment fund and city region sustainable transport settlement programs against the agreed delivery assurance principles. Now, the Portfolio Review Board met in February and considered a number of change requests. At the Overview and Scrutiny Committee meeting, it was agreed that internal audit be requested to undertake a review of these current processes, including the role of the Portfolio Review Board, which I welcome. I would now like to move the single recommendation as set out in the report. Is that seconded, please? Thank you, Claire. Okay, would you like to speak to that, Claire? No? Anybody else like to speak to this? No? Okay, thank you very much. In that case, can I move the recommendation has been moved? Can those in favour of the single recommendation we've got please show now? Thank you, that's carried unanimously. Thank you. Right, item 16 then, the Mayoral Combined Authority and Mayoral Budget Forecast 23-24. This is to note, is that right, Rachel? Yep, so I'm sure we've all noted that. Is that agreed? Yes, thank you very, very much indeed. In that case, that is the meeting closed. Thank you, everybody, for attending. Thank you, members of the public, those who come in online. Really good to see you all. And I hope that if government are watching, they can see how well we all get on together when we try. Thank you very much. Bye.